Order the City Council meeting of June 21st, 2021, and I would like to introduce our new city manager, Amanda Mack. To my left, it's her first day on the job, and she's observing a council meeting. So let's clap for her. She's finally here. We've had a full day today, didn't we?
Very full.
Yes. Okay, so we will start with a prayer by Councilman Josh Wye, so please rise.
O God, creator of all things and source of wisdom and knowledge, send your Holy Spirit to guide our thoughts, words, and actions so that everything we do will begin with your inspiration and continue with your guidance and blessing. Help us to speak and act with integrity so we may uphold the values of the City of Watertown. May we use our talents and abilities in the best ways possible so that you may be glorified and our neighborhood served. We pray these things through Jesus, your Son, in the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilman. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Albertson?
Here.
Bueller? Bueller.
Here.
Hoyer?
So old.
Oh, she did. Okay. Here. Sorry, we were giggling.
Holeen?
Here.
Lallam?
Here.
Manti?
Here.
Redemsky? Absent. Roby?
Here.
Vilhauer?
Here.
Y?
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Have a motion by Lallam and a second by Bueller. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 6 is a public comment period. This is a time reserved for anyone who would like to make a public comment to step forward and do so. We do have a sign-up sheet and a policy for everyone. If anyone wishes to speak, please come forward or say permission to speak if you're online. Hearing no one, we will move on to item 7, which is approval of the agenda. I have a motion by Lallam and a second by Manti. Any discussion? Yes.
I'll be recusing myself from items F and G.
Okay. Vilhauer, F and G. Councilman Roby?
And I'll be recusing myself from item H. Thank you.
Councilman Y?
I will recuse myself from item H as well.
Councilman Hoyer?
I will be recusing myself from item H as well.
Hey, lots of recusals. We still have a council. Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 8 is the regular agenda, and A is canvass results of the city election held on June 15, 2021. Have a motion by Lallam. Second by Vilhauer. And I will ask the Finance Officer, Kristen Bobzien, to go over the results with us, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Attached to the agenda is actually the canvas of the election. The first thing, what I'll do is I'll just kind of go over each one of the items with the number of votes, and that will certify the votes. So for Charter Amendment number 5, yes votes were 2,697, no votes were 1,055. So Charter Amendment 5 passed. Then for the official canvas of the votes for the mayor and council, Holeen, 3,010 votes. Karen, 1,237. Ward A, Solberg, 398. Danforth, 774. For Ward B, Paulson, 459. Redemsky, 423. Ward C, Shetty, 220, Hoyer, 184. Ward D is Bueller by nomination. Ward E is Vilhauer by nomination. And at large is Y, 1,923, and Tupper, 2,015. So that is the official canvas of the election that was held on June 15th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, are there any comments or questions? Councilman Vilhauer?
I just want to give a huge shout out to Kristen and her office for all the work going into and carrying out the election. I know a lot of time and effort went into the part of you and your staff, Kristen.
Thank you.
I'll second that. Anyone else? All right, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item B is the second reading of ordinance number 21-23 to supplement the 2021 budget for various departments and projects and line item transfers.
So moved.
Have a motion by Albertson and a second by Roby. And I will ask the finance officer, Kristen, to tell us about this one as well.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is the second reading of the budget supplement and also the line item transfers. I did go over it with the first reading. I'll run through it really fast. If there's any questions, I can answer them. So for the general fund, the supplement is $95,000, and that's going to go to ICAP. That's for the kitchen equipment. The fire department and ambulance department is a joint one. That was for the increase for the temporary salary to extend the part-time position to the end of the year. Then when we jumped to the BBB, that was when Julie had came and asked to have the original budget that was asked for in 2021, which was kind of held back due to not knowing how the taxes were going to come in. So that's for $55,000. And the capital improvement fund, the land purchase of $80,000. That is to purchase that land off of 81, and I believe it's kind of north of 10. And then the $1,073,500, a portion of that is to increase the downtown park budget, and the remainder is to supplement the budget for the ADA park that the Parks Department is doing. On the budget line item transfers, we'll be transferring $38,700 from the street department dump truck line to the pickup line item. Rob had spoke about the ability to get another truck that is needed, a pickup for the department. And then the other portion, I noticed that I had an error that is not to cover 10th Avenue North. This line transfer is to cover the ADA park. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer them.
All right, thank you. Council, any questions or comments? See none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item C is approval of resolution number 21-30, contingency transfer general fund. Motion by Manti. Second by Hoyer. And I'll ask the finance officer, Kristen, to tell us about this one, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Before you is a transfer from the contingency account. The city does budget a $300,000 contingency. I think this is the second one that we've kind of tapped into. So Terry Kelly with the Parks approached me. They were having trouble with the bucket truck, and it kind of came up faster than anticipated. So he asked that we use the contingency transfer process. So that's what we have, $49,500. That does leave the balance in that account of $143,500 if this is approved. If there's any specific questions in regards to the bucket truck, I know that Terry is online.
All right, thank you. Have a question from Councilman Lallam.
TK, are you available?
You bet.
Hey, on this 49.5, that's for a bucket truck. Is that a replacement? Is for the whole truck, or is that a portion of it, or what are we looking at on there?
That will be a replacement, and it's a used unit. I've been working with Terex and finding some used quality items around. We've identified two. One's at 49,000, one's at 49.5. And Councilman, what that would replace is we had two in our inventory. We've been battling with really only one for about the last year because it did not meet DOT inspection. That was about 18,000 to bring basically a $10,000 unit to usable. So we've been holding off with one unit. That was a hand-me-down from the utilities from about 8 years ago. We did blow the motor on that one about 2 weeks ago, or two rods and the crankshaft went out. The quote was 8,000, and then when we researched it, the trade-in value on that would have been about 7,000 value. So it made sense to talk to Kristen just to kind of look forward in the process. We did have one budgeted in long-term CIP, but unfortunately, this happened a lot quicker than we thought it would. So that's kind of where we're at right now is actually on a daily basis. We're sharing a unit with the street department. We kind of check it out in the morning, use it for forestry and parks. If Rob needs it for, say, a street light or something like that, or a signal, we kind of return it. So this is definitely a need we have, an emergency, and I apologize for having to come to you for this, but definitely a need.
So that will be replacing one. What is the unit that you're looking at buying?
It is a 2014 Dodge 5500 with a 45-foot reach, telescopic boom. And we would normally go larger to a 55 or 60, but again, the question may come up. We're really close on getting the grapple saw to bid, which will be a 90-foot reach. So we feel this will actually be a more of a benefit to the department for even little things like the uptown banners, the 212 banners. It's sort of more maneuverable than our bigger, larger bucket trucks. So it's basically the larger 5500 pickup unit with a body on it and the hoist.
Thanks, TK.
You bet. Thank you.
Is there any salvage at all, salvage value for the blown motor vehicle?
Yeah, we're actually, our plan is when we, within the budget period to hold on to those for a trade-in value. They do see some salvage, probably in that 3,000 to 5,000, but we would plan on using that towards the trade-in of the 2022 purchase to get us back up
Okay.
to 2 units.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone else?
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item D is second reading of ordinance number 21-25, an ordinance amending section 10.0105 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown, replacing references to mayor with city manager relating to the duties and powers of the fire chief. A motion by Vilhauer and a second by White, and I will ask the city attorney, Matt Roby, to explain this, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance, in ordinance, there's a section regarding the powers of the fire chief in the event of a fire to order the removal of an existing building to prevent the spread of fire, or to order the tear down of the remaining portion of a structure. Currently in ordinance, it spells out that the mayor or 2 members of the council need to get the fire chief needs to get their check off in order to make those calls. This would change that to reflect that they would get the check off from the city manager rather than the mayor and city council.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, council? See none, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item E is the second reading of ordinance number 21-26, an ordinance amending chapter 7.18 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown regarding the composition, election, and terms of the council members. Have a motion by Lallam and a second by Albertson. And I'll ask the city attorney, Matt Roby, to tell us about this, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance change, again, comes along with our change in form of government that we're going through at the moment, reflects the new composition of the council, as well as the replacement of a council president and vice president with a deputy mayor, which will be elected at the first meeting in July.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes, Councilman Vilhauer.
Not a question about this map, but I know we've gone through a lot of these the last few meetings. Are we more coming that you foresee, or are we about the end of this now?
There's one remaining that needs to be addressed in the short term. The mayor and Amanda and I discussed it this morning briefly regarding the subcommittees of the council. So currently it, contemplates two 5-member subcommittees. As you all know, currently those two basically just operate as one big committee prior to the meeting. So that's going to be a discussion that Amanda will have with the council members to see kind of what form you want that to take going forward, whether you just reduce that number or if there's something new that maybe the council wants to do. But that's kind of left out there hanging until a decision is made as to how we're gonna proceed in that way. And then I did mention that there's this administrative appeal issue that needs to be implemented at some point in the near term. And essentially, in our home rule charter, we've crafted this form of government that isn't specifically provided for under statute. And we're allowed to do that under charter, but with that ability, we have to implement just a generic administrative appeal process. The city of Brookings has one. Essentially, anybody that's aggrieved by any decision of any actor on behalf of the city has a mechanism whereby they can appeal that decision. And so that'll be probably coming here in the near future. But as far as the mayor to city manager transition stuff, we're done with that. Yep.
Any other questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item F is the first reading of ordinance number 21-29, establishing a zoning designation of A1 Agricultural District for the area of land to be known upon annexation as Harmony Hill 3rd Edition. And this is just a first reading, so no action. And I'll ask the Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, to tell us about it.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an application by the Benedictine Sisters of Watertown, Mother of God Monastery. They've submitted a petition for annexation and zoning for a portion of their property located generally along South Highway 81, south of the roundabout. This portion of their property contains a little over 18 acres. It is surrounded by city limits, and they're proposing to temporarily zone this particular piece of land as A1 Agricultural District. I do have a map of the area that I'll share my screen to display that. So again, here's the roundabout on the map, and you go south on 81, and this is the parcel being petitioned for annexation and zoning. This being the first reading, the second reading would coincide with the annexation approval as well at the next council meeting. Planning staff, Stacy and Brandy are both online with us, and we'll stand by for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions, council? Yeah, I'm glad to see there's a couple of the newly elected council members here. This is a first reading, and so it'll be a different council that takes action on it. So you've been here, and so now you're aware that the first reading has occurred. Takes a little bit of the grief away from that. Okay, if there's no questions, we'll move on to item G, which is the first reading of ordinance number 21-30, an amendment to the zoning designation for a portion of Harmony Hill from A1 Agricultural District to C3 Highway Commercial District, PUD Planned Unit Development, and R3 Multifamily Residential District. Again, another first reading, no action, but I'll ask the Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, to tell us about it.
Thank you again, Mayor. I'll pull up the map. This is directly related to the previous action. My apologies, I'm trying to find the one with the clear designation of the new zoning. Yeah, this one shows the entire area, not not specifically what is being proposed, but here I'll show this and just outline the. So again, in relation to what's to be known as Harmony Hill, we have this property on the South Highway 81. And again, here's the roundabout on this map. If you come down here, this future road is part of the future development improvements. But what this rezone does is it takes a portion of the property that we just had first reading on to be zoned agricultural, and it makes a portion of that to be zoned C3, and it also splits out these zoning designations in these other property areas. The primary one being this PUD area, the planned unit development, where the sisters have a plan for development improvements within this zoning boundary, and then also these R3 and C3 designations for development purposes as well in the near future. And I believe that's pretty well the gist of it. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to help answer.
Thank you. Any questions, council? None. Okay. So we'll move on to item H, which is renewal of alcoholic beverage license for the period of July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. I have a motion by Lallam.
Second.
And a second by Holleen. And I'll ask the finance officer, Kristen Bobzien, to tell us about this.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is the very last renewal that we have for the malt beverage and South Dakota Farm Wine license. So this is the last one for that period of July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2022.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item I is approval of resolution number 21-26, the plat of the Lakes of Willow Creek, first edition to the municipality of Watertown in the county of Cottington, South Dakota, and authorization for the mayor to sign the development agreement and the plat as a proprietor. A motion by Lallam and second by Holleen. And I'll ask the Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, to tell us about it.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a proposed plat for an area to be known as the Lakes of Willow Creek First Edition within the city of Watertown. And it includes numerous lots for development within the subdivision. I will again pull up a map of this plat, and we can talk through some of the details and logistics here. You'll note in the title of the action item, the city is a proprietor on this plat due to a portion of the right-of-way running through some city property. And that is identified with 28th Street Northeast in the right-of-way. Some of the extents of that right-of-way does come through city property. So we have to be a party to the plat in order for that to be filed appropriately. This is the front page of the plat, and then each of these sections of the plat are broken down in more detail in the subsequent pages. I'd note that this plat is in conformance with the preliminary plan that's been vetted through the staff review and the Planning Commission review processes. The corresponding development agreement touches on a multitude of things. As with each development, some of them get a little bit unique and specific. Some of the anomalies that I'd like to call out or highlight on this one are that the road right-of-way being designated on this plat is 66 feet wide for 28th Street Northeast. This is shy of our collector route 80-foot requirement. The reason being that it's progressed to this point is in part due to the fact that the preliminary plan was approved just prior to us adopting our new engineering design standards, and so we went ahead and carried through the prior approved 66-foot right-of-way through the rest of the preliminary plan approvals, and then subsequent to that approval, the engineering design standards came out and were formally adopted, which require an 80-foot right-of-way for a collector route. The other thing I would note specific to this, we have 28th Street identified as a collector route, but we also have the future use of the known 31st Street, which will also be a collector route. due to factors with physical constraints of the development, we missed extending a collector on the quarter line like we'd hoped to, and we've talked through that in detail again through the preliminary plan phases. But 28th Street is identified as a collector. 31st will again be identified as that in the future, and the right-of-way for 28th is being approved as, or proposed for approval at 66 feet. One of the other specifics to this development agreement relate to the maintenance of 31st Street. In the prior development agreement, in the previous phase of, or the previous ownership of this subdivision, it was indicated in that development agreement that the developer shall have maintenance responsibilities for 31st Street, all the way out to the extent of its connection with Highway 212. That language from the prior owner's development agreement was copied over into this development agreement with the added stipulation that they would maintain that until the point in time 31st Street is constructed to meet the city's engineering design standards and proposed for acceptance by the city engineer. Another unique factor here that we've been working closely with the developer on are the checkoffs from the Corps of Engineer and the Game Fish and Parks, as we're required to do with state and federal agency involvement. We have received jurisdictional determination as far as wetlands are concerned within the subdivision. The Corps of Engineers have made those determinations. The only area of impacts that they've determined are the actual channels of themselves of Willow Creek and then the tributary to Willow Creek, otherwise informally known as Cherry Creek, that ties into Willow Creek. And there are components of infrastructure improvements running through that jurisdictional area, and we do not have checkoff from the Corps or Game Fish and Parks yet to allow those construction improvements to commence just yet. And we would hold off the city approval of that area until we receive those approvals from the state and federal agencies. Aside from that, I know the developer is here this evening. We also have Brandy Hanton online, the city planner that's worked at great extents with drafting the development agreement and coordination with the plat. And then also Stacy Bungard, the community development manager, is online with us as well, and we'll stand by for questions.
Okay, I noticed that the floodplain boundaries were removed from the plat, and showing the floodplain boundary as one of the plat requirements with elevations. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Brandy, if I could refer to you, you had done some research on that, and if you could share with the logic on why that was removed, please.
Yes, thank you, Heath. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so we kind of went back and forth with that. We have a couple different sections in ordinance about showing the floodplain boundaries, and then also just referencing what firm panel they're on, and at least making note on the plat that the property is within the floodplain so that a future buyer would know to ask questions about it before purchasing. And this area actually has, FEMA has a Zone A floodway or floodplain designated, and then the city did a Willow Creek study for this area as well, so that we would have a detailed analysis and have a base flood elevation. So because of those two just different floodplains designated for this area, we just noted both of them so that that could be researched further. Where it talks about boundaries being shown, that is within Title 24, and it doesn't necessarily, I can pull up the language actually so that we have that straight, but we also did check, because of our community rating system, we checked off with FEMA when we were updating Title 24 so that we were not out of compliance necessarily or not getting points for the activities that we're doing with what we're showing on the plats.
So our ordinance says that the floodplain boundary and elevations are to be shown on the plat, and they haven't done that. So instead we've replaced it with a note that says portions of this plat are located within the FEMA designated special flood hazard area, map and panel number, effective date, and a portion of the Willow Creek floodplain study adopted by the City of Watertown. So that's the compromise
Right.
that was made. And why were we thinking that we wouldn't follow our ordinance?
Well, and we kind of were having internal discussions on that, and I had explained the logic with it. But I'll pull up that section that you're referencing.
And I believe, Mayor, if I could chime in briefly, part of the concept or logic behind the note in lieu of the boundary was because of the two steering guidelines that we have. We have the FEMA firm, the Zone A, the approximate zone, but then we also have the Willow Creek study, which essentially have two differing outlines or boundaries of floodplain extents. And we felt that that could be all the more confusing to the plat by identifying both of them, or asking the developer to identify both of them on the plat. I believe that was part of the discussion anyway.
Okay, Councilman Hoyer?
Can we see or compare both of them just so we can kind of get an idea of how that's going to fall with the roadway?
Are you able to pull those boundaries up, Brandy? My system will be very slow if I try to do that on GIS down
Yep.
here.
And then also I have the language pulled up so we can compare. So here in chapter 2406-16 for the plat requirements, we, on number 12 here, for properties within the special flood hazard area, reference the effective flood insurance rate map date and then the community and panel number. So as far as our plat requirements, we are meeting ordinance. The section that the mayor is referencing is actually in the chapter prior, sorry. So in chapter 2405-19, areas subject to periodic inundation. And then, so here is where it states, if a subdivision proposal or other proposed new development is within a flood-prone area, the floodway and floodplain shall be shown on the plat and elevations must be shown. Any such proposal shall be reviewed to assure that. And then A through D. The only thing is that this is referencing a plat and it's really not in the plat requirements section. And then it is inconsistent with what we require for plats. And it does state it here, and I think that as far as boundaries, it doesn't state boundaries necessarily. It just says that the floodplain shall be shown on the plat and elevations must be shown. And elevations make it tough too, and your floodplain is, it's potentially always changing because we know with the approved preliminary plan for this area that they will be bringing in fill and changing the grades, and then requesting a LOMAR F, which is a letter of map revision based on fill, and then that does change the floodplain too. So by showing the boundaries, it really, it doesn't stay current with how the map is constantly changing.
Well, the maps don't constantly change, but they occasionally change.
Right.
And there's no floodway, well, FEMA has an A zone. We adopted a floodway, and we met with FEMA recently, and FEMA said that modeling with that technique has been found to be underestimating the impact of filling in floodplains, that the floodways actually should be quite a bit larger, and that analysis with the two-dimensional modeling has not been done. So not that we'd be so concerned about this development, but downstream of it, there could be impacts that we don't know about because the analysis hasn't been done. Just for the council's information. Another thing that you didn't mention was that this developer is proposing to use the city-owned property to meet the federally mandated water quality control requirements. And to my knowledge, we've never allowed that in the past. So this could be setting a precedence. It's city-owned property, and they're using it so that they don't have to do the water quality facility on their own property. They don't have to give up their own land. They can use the city property for that. And I discussed this with the staff, and I think that they addressed when you're using the lake as the water quality facility, it's to trap the pollutants, and they should periodically be removed. It's city property, so is it for this development only? Is it for this development and the next one owned by this property owner, or everyone in the watershed for this pond? Who's using the city property to meet their federal requirement?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for reminding me of that. That was another one of the anomalies here that I know we wanted to touch on. The feedback or the discussion with staff and with the developer in relation to that are, yes, there's city property here with a large body of water. The developer has designed in their development to utilize that body of water for both water quality and water quantity detention means. And that would then function and serve all these lots that are being platted here, being proposed to be platted before the council this evening. When looking into that further, we wanted to make sure that if that were approved, that the development agreement addressed the maintenance of that pond accordingly. We do have to still execute a BMP maintenance agreement, best management practices maintenance agreement, with the developer. And in that agreement, what we would hope to do is stipulate the developer's requirements per city ordinance language when contemplating regional detention ponds. And when you look at this, essentially that's what this would be functioning at. So in Chapter 23, we researched this in our drainage ordinances, and we do have the option as a city to allow the use of regional detention ponds, and it talks in that ordinance about the city procuring the property that's going to be a regional pond and then having stipulations in place for monetary contributions for the developer's use of that now city property. Now in this case, we don't have to buy anything. We don't have to have the developer dedicate anything to us. We already own this property. But we would still like to follow that ordinance for regional detention requirements as far as the monetary contribution from the developer to maintain that pond, or place those maintenance responsibilities strictly on them in perpetuity. And that's what we would weigh out when we finalize the BMP maintenance agreement. I don't know if I missed any specifics on that, Brandy, but could you touch on anything I missed on there with our discussions?
No, I think you covered everything.
Okay, so we do have a study that says that we should not be doing detention in this basin, and we haven't been requiring it on anyone else unless they cannot safely convey the floodwaters for a 100-year event to the receiving body, which is Willow Creek in this situation. But now we are, and the reason that we don't in the Willow Creek watershed is that detention in this location exacerbates the peak for the basin. So it makes it worse. But now we're saying we are requiring detention here? Or is that just to call it a regional pond? Because we don't normally do regional water quality facilities. We do detention, regional detention, but normally water quality facilities are localized and they work better close to the site. So you're doing detention here, and you're doing water quality control for a region. And what is the boundary of that region?
So as far as the functionality of the detention effect on the basin, I asked that specifically to our assistant city engineer, and he took that back to the developer's engineer, and they looked at the peak where the Willow Creek Basin and the time of concentration and the time for that peak to arrive in this location. And according to that information that was shared, it shows from the modeling that these flows from this detained area will be into Willow Creek and out before the main peak of the stream reaches this area. So that would, according to their engineer's information and what's been reviewed by the assistant city engineer, that would then mitigate the concern for this compounding the peak of Willow Creek and not adversely impact that. As far as the regional extents for this pond, if it were to be approved and function as a regional pond, that boundary could be expanded. I could see it being a logical line of demarcation to use the extents of this development. Again, if the developer's agreeable to pay for the maintenance of that in perpetuity, or have the properties assessed back that maintenance cost as per city ordinances, and that footprint could be expanded on with the appropriate study and information that shows that this pond is adequate to perform for a larger footprint outside of this particular development, which I think that it could if it wanted to be utilized in that manner, just based on the capacity that's there, that it could be expanded to other developers in this area.
What's the design? What are we talking about here? What did they propose? Is it just for this plat, or is it for all of the lakes of Willow Creek, or is it for the whole basin? That was my question.
It's for the portion of this development that drains directly to this pond.
So there'll be other ones for the areas that drain to a drainage ditch upstream of the pond?
Correct. As you get further north, and I believe it's just as further north outside of this plat, that basin, that sub-basin drains to the north pond and then down through the creek and through this area.
Okay.
But it'll be detained in that northerly pond that's on that northerly half of this subdivision.
Okay. I know it's a lot easier to do it this way. This is not the first time the city was asked to be able to use a receiving water or a city public water body to be the facility. But we've said no before. This time we're saying yes.
Yeah, and I believe, Mayor, really what it comes down to in my mind is following that ordinance that talks about regional detention ponds and city ownership and the maintenance of that being assessed back to the property owners that contribute to that regional pond. And as long as we have the structure to carry something like this out, I'm comfortable with doing that as long as we follow through with the structure that's outlined in the ordinance.
Okay, if this pond becomes green and stinky like they often do, who cleans it up? Is the city going to be responsible to is that addressed?
As far as the quality of the water itself, that can be addressed in the B&P maintenance agreement, or at least acknowledge that the city wouldn't have any responsibility in that. For instance, if there's condos built next to this pond area and we get complaints from the residents because there's a film of green moss over the pond, we obviously wouldn't want to be responsible for that. We wouldn't want the city forces to have to pay to clean that up or address that issue. So, and Brandy could remind me if there's anything in this development agreement for that, or if we were going to address that on the B&P maintenance agreement, but it is a note that needs to be addressed.
Right, and we do state about finalizing the B&P maintenance agreement or entering into that, and then that will address the perpetual maintenance of this pond. And it'll either be performed by the developer or assessed to the landowners once the property is conveyed, which would be more typical, but that will be addressed.
Who will decide whether the city taxpayers will do the cleaning and assess it back, or it will just be the responsibility of the Lakes of Willow Creek property owners?
I would say that it would be fair and appropriate that I bring that B&P maintenance agreement back through the council for approval.
And those are normally submitted with the plat, but not this time because they're not ready yet, or what are we waiting for on that?
Brandy, do you have an indication there on the timeline for that B&P maintenance agreement?
And so typically in the December council meeting, the second meeting in December, the council did state that they were okay with engineering being authorized to enter into those agreements because they are standard. This one, with not being so standard, except it will comply with the language in the ordinance of either, like, the taxpayers won't be paying for the maintenance. It'll either be the developer or it'll be assessed back to the property owners that are benefiting from utilizing this property.
But the assessment would be a reimbursement of the city taxpayer expense. Is that how that works?
Correct. Yeah, that's how Chapter 23 of the ordinances identifies those responsibilities being assessed back to every property owner that contributes to that pond.
Okay. The township has requested, they've expressed frustration with the city over this development in the past for the extra traffic that's generated on the township road, which is 31st Street, outside the city limits. Who's responsible for maintaining that township road between this development and Highway 212 right now?
I don't know in practice what's happening, but according to the old development agreement with the prior owner of this land, they were responsible for maintaining 31st Street from the extents of this area all the way south to Highway 212. And that is the information, that is the language that we rolled into the development agreement that's on tonight for approval.
So the old language says the developer agrees to maintain all public streets, including 31st Street, to the Highway 212 frontage road until such time as they are paved and all required improvements are completed to the satisfaction of the city engineer. And the current language that you've proposed, could you read that?
Absolutely. Let me find it here quickly.
Madam Mayor, if I could, can the council ask some questions on
Sure,
this? or-
absolutely.
Thank you. The developers are here. How close are you guys to coming up with a best practice agreement? Have you guys looked into that at all yet?
Typically, the city writes it.
The city writes it? Okay. So if we're gonna look at this and looking at, we gave that authority to the engineering staff here in December. I mean, what we're talking about is them using their judgment professionally and coming up with a practice that is gonna do that. I don't think it's up to the city to maintain that. I would assume the developers are in that same agreement as well. As far as 31st, if anyone's drove 31st recently, I don't know that anyone maintains it like it should be. If you wanna, lose some dirt out of your car, that's the spot to do it. But I think we should just look at this and let our staff do their job and we move forward. So I would call the question on it.
Councilman Hoyer?
My request hasn't been fulfilled yet. I want to just take a look at it, guys, because when
the question is called, you call the question first.
What am I to do, Matt? I just take a vote on the motion?
Yeah, two-thirds vote ends discussion.
To just stop talking about it? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, Albertson,
No.
Bueller. No. Hoyer,
nope.
Pauline,
Aye.
Lallam.
Aye.
Manti,
No.
Roby,
No.
Vilhauer,
No.
Y,
No.
fails.
Okay, motion fails, so that is just, do we continue to discuss, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the motion to call the question fails, so discussion continues.
Okay. Councilman Hoyer?
So, Brandy, could you be kind enough just to pull it up so we can compare those two floodplains? The concern I have here is just when we did our core sample, we found some, and that's just in one location, so I don't know what the ground's like here, guys. It's nothing like beyond that. It's just, I want to know if we're going to pull it out like we are on that other site, and then we're going to put engineered fill in, then that, is reassuring. We just don't want to see roads going premature.
Madam Mayor, if I could briefly, just to respond to the previous question regarding the maintenance of 31st, this is how it reads in the proposed development agreement as I have shared in my screen. Developer agrees to maintain 31st Street Northeast to the Highway 212 frontage road until such a time it is improved to meet the city standards to the satisfaction of the city engineer. And I
Okay.
believe that's similar to what the other one read, with exception to a reference to the city standards that are now adopted.
And this, and what you said before was ready for adoption, and there's a really good chance that this won't be annexed because properties adjacent to it could possibly not want to be annexed for a very long time. And I know the township is very concerned about who's maintaining it, because back when this was originally platted, they were very concerned about just adding 4 building permits for 4 industrial properties that weren't going to generate a huge amount of traffic. And that was the deal that was made with the previous landowner, was that the previous landowner agreed to maintain, and then that runs with the land. So the current landowner now is responsible for maintenance. And I don't know if the township knows that or not, but this is still going to be the developer maintaining until 31st Street is improved to meet the city standards to the satisfaction of the city engineer. I just wanted that to be perfectly clear, that that's what the developer is signing, the developer, and that runs with the land. So whoever owns that land, the people that buy the lots, including the city, will have some responsibility. If we put our ice arena up there and we own a portion of the land, that would run with those lots and the condos and everybody else. So if the lots are all sold off, that'll be a shared responsibility that might be challenging. Does anybody else have questions?
Mayor, could I add to that?
Sure.
So I just wanted to state that, as the mayor had said, with that Stromside, or Stromseth East Side addition, the sole access came from 31st Street Northeast. And so that's why I think it was probably really important to the township that the maintenance responsibilities were spelled out, because that was the, if you can trace that, Heath, or do you have your screen shared? So they only were utilizing 31st and then Albin Avenue, and nothing was improved to city standards. Now at least 28th Street will be extended from Willow Creek Drive. So there will be paved access to city standards as the hopefully primary route. And then that 31st would end up being secondary. And that, but we did just keep that language that was in that previous development agreement so that it was covered. But I'm assuming that's why the language was added at that time when that first plat of Stromseth East Side Edition came through.
Okay, thank you. So to Michael's question, I did see I saw the soil samples on the road section, and there was a great deal of fill, and that's what you're referring to. What's happening with that? Is there engineered fill, or what's the story there?
Yeah, we do have the soils report back from American Engineering Testing that the developer had performed within the rights-of-way of 28th Street and the rest, some other portions of within the subdivision. I have not gotten to review that in great detail myself. I passed it on to the assistant city engineer, and the geotech engineer that did the report also provided paving recommendations. And to my knowledge, I haven't heard of any red flags yet. Maybe Jamie or Colin could speak to this tonight, but to my knowledge, there weren't any huge red flags or anything that they couldn't address through the construction of the roadway and the installation of the utilities.
Everything with, in detail with it, and we're definitely, everything's in our comfort zone of what we can do. And, back to 31st, we do maintain it occasionally, but you got Dunick that shares that too and utilizes it real heavily, with their mining and asphalt operations on 31st.
Jamie, are they still technically county on the other side of the road, or is that's city?
That is
county, right?
Yeah.
So do we have control over that?
The development agreement says that everything adjacent to this plat and all the way down to the frontage road just north of 212 is the responsibility of the owners of the lots within the Lakes of Willow Creek.
On the west side?
No, the whole thing. And the reason for that, the township didn't have the resources to maintain it when this was originally platted. So they knew this would generate traffic. They didn't have the resources to maintain it. And so that was the deal that was struck. He got 4 building rights in that property. That was it. Everybody had to have sealed holding tanks because there's no sewer anywhere near. I think there is water out there. But the township has been very unhappy with the level of maintenance. And they've contacted the city, various different individuals, numerous times throughout the years since this was originally platted. And I don't remember the year, but I'm thinking 2010-ish, 2011, when the original plat was recorded. So it's been about 10 years. Brandy, do you know the date? You're muted.
I was recalling 2013, but I can confirm.
Okay, so it's been about 8 to 10 years. And the township has recently contacted me and told me they're getting an attorney because they feel like the city is encouraging development in this area even with an extra road to get to these properties. There still will be people taking that township road, and the level of maintenance on it hasn't been satisfactory. They're responsible ultimately, but they don't have the resources. There's 2 or 3 culverts, maybe even 4, where Willow Creek is, and the road's failing there a little bit.
And I'll chime in on that. I guess once we sign the developers agreement, that'll be part of our deal, and I'll get working hand in hand with the township. I know they had reached out to me about, the culverts, of possibly installing them. They're in pretty tough condition there, right at Willow Creek. And we're willing to step up and fulfill our obligation as far as what we sign the developers agreement to maintain that. And I'll have to obviously maybe pin a little of that on Dunick, but that'll be my own doings when it comes to that due to their usage of it also.
Jamie, are those still metal? Are they still metal culverts?
Yeah.
So here, if I can jump in.
Sure, go ahead, Brandy.
Here I pulled up, this is the plat of Stromseth East Side Edition, and it was actually recorded in 2011. So they did show this same connection that now the Lakes of Willow Creek is showing with 28th. So it's Stromseth Drive, but they were not required to improve that at the time this plat and development agreement were recorded. They were allowed 4 building permits for these lots, but they were using gravel streets, like the mayor had said before too, the sealed holding tanks. They do have water up here, but this 31st was their only access. So it's not necessarily an ordinance requirement or an engineering design standards that we would obligate the developer, but he was willing to still fulfill those obligations of this plat and the development agreement.
Randy, were you sharing that plat, or could you reshare your screen so you're showing that plat? We have the GIS map up right now.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Jamie, can you introduce yourself for the record for us, just to be on record?
Jamie Andrews of J&J Land Sales.
Thank you.
Can you guys can see that now? Okay, perfect. So these are the 4 lots that were being platted. They showed the right-of-way connection to Willow Creek Drive, but they were not required to improve it. They only were improving Albin Avenue to Lot 4 as a gravel street section, which is definitely not to our engineering design standards today. We wouldn't allow a plat to come through like that. So then they were having to solely access 31st Street East. Now today in the Lakes of Willow Creek, 28th Street will be improved to city standards, and we'll have the connection to the city street network. So hopefully that is the primary access and that people would not necessarily utilize it. It's inevitable that they will, but it won't be their only access anymore off of 31st Street.
Okay, thank you. I have not, just for the record, I haven't seen any of the soil logs for the ice arena area. Do we have those in our city possession now?
No, I do not, Mayor, not in
Okay.
the city engineer's office.
But we do have the boring logs for the road that we will be asked to own and maintain.
Correct.
And there are boring location 101 had 7 feet of fill. Boring 102 had 11 feet of fill. Boring 103 had 11 feet of fill. Boring 104 had 11 and a half feet of fill. Number 105 had 7 feet of fill. That's pretty significant, and I'm getting a blank. I don't see what 106 was, but assuming there's some recommendation of that.
Yeah, I'm confident in the company that did the geotech report and to follow the recommendations. And so city staff role in that would obviously be to ensure that those recommendations are followed throughout not only the construction plan finalization, but then through the construction process. One thing to note with the depths there, they are going to be installing some pretty significantly deep utilities, which is going to create some pretty excessive trench excavation. So the contractor will inherently be rebuilding the road from the utilities up, essentially, for a good portion of the roadways. So if they do run into some questionable fill in those areas that were cited as, of a significant depth, a lot of that should be clearly identified and inherently addressed because of the amount of trenching excavation they're going to need to perform for the depths of utilities that will be installed.
Okay. Councilman Hoyer?
Just for education's sake, Heath, what is that depth that we usually go for these sorts of utilities?
Typically, you'll see your water below frost line, so anything 6 to 8 feet deep is pretty common. And then sanitary, you typically want to see that just so you can account for an 8-foot to 9-foot basement. So you see those 9 to 10 feet deep. Now in this area, we're up to depths of, I guess I'd have to have Colin or Jamie tell me certainty, but I think you're up to 18, 20 feet in some areas.
We're 20 plus.
20 plus feet in some areas that they're having to install some utilities.
Is there sewer on that section that goes through the city property, the road?
No, the sewer ends there.
So would we be excavating that area?
There'll be water going through there.
Okay, so
But, in areas the city has concern, we can do an exploratory, open it up and take a look at it. If you look at the borings, there was no fill of any concern, it would have been noted in the boring logs to address it. We spent several thousands of dollars to have these borings done and in engineering to this point. So this definitely isn't a fly by the seat of our pants, and we have several $100,000 invested this so far to date. So we're definitely all about doing it right.
Councilman Hoyer?
And I just want to be clear too. It's just we've, as a community, kind of misstepped in the past, and so we trust you're going to do it right. But just asking those due diligence questions. And thank you for being as patient with it and just as diligent as you guys have been.
Any other questions or concerns, council? Okay, I'll look for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item J is approval of resolution number 21-28, the plat of Valley View 3rd Edition to the municipality of Watertown in the county of Cottington, South Dakota, and authorization for the mayor to sign the development agreement. Motion by Manti, second by Bueller. And I'll ask Heath Bonai, the Public Works Director, to tell us about this, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Another plat in another area of town. This is for residential development. I'll again share my screen and a map that shows the area in question. So this approval includes the Valley View 3rd Edition, which is up on the north side of town. This version here shows a lot of phase 1 to the south and phase 2, which is a smaller area in the middle, and then the shaded part would be all of phase 3 of Valley View 3rd that's being proposed for platting now at this point in time. The subdivision improvements up here have been reviewed and approved as far as the construction plans are concerned for all the public utilities and streets. And again, this plat proposed does match the formerly approved preliminary plan and all the details that were required and provided within that approval. With that, this of course has its development agreement and the stipulations that most subdivisions would have. This one's being fairly straightforward. There aren't many anomalies or anything unique to necessarily call out on that development agreement. Unless I'm forgetting something, Brandy, feel free to chime in. We'll otherwise stand by for any questions.
All right, thank you. How many lots are there?
Brandy, do you know that off the top of your head?
It's in the staff report that I can pull up too. I do not know off the top of my head, unfortunate. The only other thing that I would just say is not typical to development agreements or just our standard development agreement is there, we've included the cost recovery for their half of Second Street. And that is included in the development agreement, that figure.
Okay, so it's 112 lots. I see it. Added it up. They're quick. That's good. We need lots.
Yeah,
Council?
correct. 112, 80 R1, 24 R2, and 8 R3 lots all being proposed.
Any questions, council? No? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. For the record, Councilman Roby was absent from the vote. Item K is approval of resolution number 21-29, a resolution of intent to enter into a 2-year airline transportation system lease agreement with Key Lime Air Corporation, doing business as Denver Air Connection.
So moved.
Got a motion by Holeen and a second by Albertson. And I'll ask the city attorney, Matt Roby, to explain this one, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the first step required by statute to enter into a lease agreement with a private party. Essentially, you're just declaring that we intend to consider at the next council meeting a 2-year lease agreement with Denver Air Connection for space at our terminal. There'll also be a public hearing prior to that action at the July 6th council meeting. I did just, I received an email earlier today with a kind of revised layout. It looks like the actual number of square feet of shared space in the terminal will be 3,555 rather than the 3,253 listed in the resolution. So I would ask that you amend the motion to include 3,555 square feet rather than 3,253 square feet.
Okay, with you, Councilman Holeen?
Yes.
And you, Councilman Albertson? Okay, amend it. Okay. Thank you, Matt. Any questions or comments, council? Councilman Lallam?
I had asked actually Matt here about, if they were going to rebid that DOT thing and things like that, but he said that they haven't made a decision on that. So I didn't know if that would affect this lease or not.
It could,
Yeah, so I mean.
but they haven't made a decision, so we just have to keep moving
Like
forward. 'Cause
like it's
July
going to move
1st
forward.
July 1st is coming very
Yeah.
quickly.
So, yeah, it's just kind of interesting because if they bid that the other way, then are they stuck in an agreement?
No, there is,
Is there an out clause type
pull
deal?
up the language here. I believe there's some language regarding I'm confident there's language. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I'm confident
Okay.
there's language that allows them to get out of the lease if they do not win the government contract.
Okay, that's all.
And if there's not, there will be.
Okay,
And as of now, we are obligated to provide them space, and that's what Todd's gearing up for at the airport with those space.
And that's at city expense,
Correct.
splitting the room into an extra room. So we have separate space for the 2 airlines. Any other comments or questions about this? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Is there any old business? Councilman Hoyer.
So I brought it up at the last meeting, but just mentioning the housing issue and then going into the potential of an RFP. So I did some follow-up research on that, not just for the RFP, but kind of for where folks are at in our community. I just talked to some local lenders essentially. But what it came down to, and I ran a scenario essentially where it looks at somebody who's working in like one of our manufacturers. So someone who's making probably about $30,000 a piece. So 2 individuals, $60,000. And essentially what I learned through that process is that their range, assuming they have no consumer debt, because the numbers have kind of changed from being able to borrow nowadays. It used to be kind of assumed 28% to 30% of your income, maybe 32. Nowadays, they'll lend you up to 35, no problem. In some instances, they'll take you up to 45% of your income for a mortgage payment. So it opens them up quite a bit. So some of the housing that was identified there, if you had no consumer debt, you can get up to $200,000, $220,000. If you're like a lot of people and you own a vehicle, then you're looking at somebody having potentially 2 vehicles. They own $700 there, maybe $200 in credit card debt. The best you could do is about $120,000. So I'm just putting out that information for you guys as you go forward, thinking about that issue that we face in our community, like many issues, and many communities face this. But that's kind of your pocket demographic looking at it. I learned that a lot of people struggle just to have the high enough credit score these days, which was a surprise to me. I didn't realize that that was such an issue, but 640 is what they look for, and a lot of people aren't hitting that for various reasons. But it's the secondary debt that gets them, and yeah, if you don't have secondary debt, you can do 200, but you're going to be having like a $1,700 house payment every month. So is that necessarily responsible lending? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. But other folks qualify for about $650 a month, which puts them in that 120 range. But just giving you guys a little lay of the land. Did a little homework on it, so there you go.
All right, thank you. Any other old business?
Mayor, as we're sitting here, I did locate the clause in the lease that does allow the lease to terminate if they do not win the EAS contract.
Okay, thank you. So it is there. He's figured that out. Yes, Councilman Roby?
Thank you. Just quick update on the ice. We had, of course, a big update a couple weeks ago, but we have got Dick Strasberg working on a number of things for us, and he's been doing some research. He's been a very valuable resource because he can do that stuff so effectively. So we're waiting to hear back from him on a couple of those things, and also he's been doing some work, and we're going to have some visits with him about the architects we're talking to. So we're angling towards getting an architect identified. So that's just kind of the latest. If you guys want to throw anything else in, feel free.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add to that? Councilman Billhar?
I could just comment, I think when we reach that point and we're getting close to it, that we do recommend an architectural firm to work with. That's a huge step in this whole process. So we are getting close to that. But again, like Don said, Dick's assistance has been invaluable working through this of late.
Thank you. Anyone else? Old business? I do have a piece of new business. As you probably remember, 2020, on the 4th of July, since fireworks are no longer allowed to be shot at City Park, Lou's Fireworks did offer some assistance in letting people shoot fireworks from noon to midnight at Anza Soccer Complex. And they provided little areas spaced out appropriately for safety, and they cleaned it up afterwards, and they're offering to do that again. And so I'm actually going to ask you for a resolution to allow the fireworks to be fired, because that needs council permission to do that. Anywhere in the city limits, you can't shoot fireworks unless the council says you can. So I'm asking you to say you can, and any motion by the council is a resolution. So I got a bunch of hands up. Yes. Yes. Okay, we got a motion by Lallam and a second by Bueller for fireworks on the 4th of July till midnight to be allowed to be shot like last year as an alternative to City Park.
Mayor.
Councilman Albertson?
Does that include the 3rd also, the fireworks that they're shooting on the 3rd, or is that?
They have.
We've already done that.
We've already approved the
approved that.
fireworks.
Yeah, I
on
didn't
the
know if
3rd,
we had to
the
do
public
something.
display.
Okay,
That was
thank you.
on the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Y?
That, on 4th of July, that's consumer fireworks,
Right.
correct?
Right. That's people that would buy their own, whatever's legal in our, and there's a list. And I know they know what that is at the places where you buy fireworks. They know what our regulations are. And this is really a tremendous service by Lou's Fireworks to offer this for the city residents. Anyone else? Councilman Lallam?
And just so the public's aware that the ANSA is the soccer complex out by Premier Fields.
Yes.
So in case they didn't know what ANSA was, that is the soccer
17th
complex, yes.
17th Avenue Southeast by Premier Softball Complex, the Anza Soccer Complex. And there's a public parking lot there. They'll have metal garbage cans. They don't want to put hot stuff in plastic garbage cans. It doesn't always work out real well. And actually, I think that Lou's just had people pile it. Did anybody go there last year? They pile it outside, I think, and then they take care of it. So that was pretty nice that they do that. Of course, then they get to sell more fireworks, so it's not like they're not getting a benefit from it. Yeah. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Is there any other new business? All right, are there any liaison member reports? Councilman Vilhar?
A couple things from the utility, or a few things from the utility board. New board member Rich Thomas, new president Lisa Carrico. Very concerned. They're having, I think they had one a couple years ago, another cybersecurity audit. That is something that is really a huge issue relative to utility companies around the country. And ours is not exempt from those problems, so they're having a cybersecurity audit taking place for their operations out there. Also, they are having a consultant work with them, and hopefully we'll have a result back to us by the time we do our budget later on this summer, fall now, concerning the transfer amount. That's been every year we kind of go back and forth, the utility department on that, and they have a consultant that has worked through that for any number of other utility companies around the country, and they're engaging them to give them some recommendations relative to arriving at a transfer amount to the city.
Thank you. Any other liaison member reports? Any announcements? Councilman Lallam.
This is, for the most part, our last meeting for us outgoing council members. I wish the new council members and the new mayor good luck. I'd like to thank my colleagues, including the mayor and the city staff, for my last 4 years. It's been very enjoyable. Hopefully we have served the community as well as they have served us, because I do believe that our community is fantastic when it comes to that. So I don't really have too much else to say besides I just want to thank each and every one of you. I've become friends with everyone here and respect everyone in this room. So I thank you all for all your dedication and the people that are continuing to go forward. I thank you and wish you the best of luck as well. And if you need something from us, I'm sure I speak for probably everyone on this board that's leaving. I think we're more than happy to help this community. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Councilman Hoyer?
Oh, I was just going to toss out, I know it hit inboxes today. There were a couple items that got kind of pushed back in finance due to the election cycle that are a little bit delinquent. So I'm hoping that everybody opens that email and
Yes,
we can get
I actually do have a quorum of folks
Okay.
That will be able to attend a special council meeting at noon on July 1st, which is a week from Thursday. There were 2 items that didn't get published, and so we couldn't do it on this agenda. I told you all it was 1 item, but it's actually 2. Sorry about that. Still should be relatively quick, I think.
It's another finance thing.
Anyone else? Councilman Vilhauer?
I just want to echo what Adam said. Looks like, looking up, there's only going to be 3 of us that are going to be coming back in the near future. And I want to thank those two that served in the past. I tallied up today, I guess that's what accountants do if they have spare time. There's 8 people, including you, Mayor, getting off this dais, and that combines for 40, adds up to 40 years of experience, council's experience that we are losing with those of you that are departing. So as a stay-on member, I thank you for your service and hope we can do our justice going forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Roby?
Won't be repetitive, just that I also appreciate everybody that's been up here and will be up here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Mantee? Did you? Oh, Councilman Albertson?
I also, after 8 years, would like to thank everybody for the opportunity to serve the community. It really is an eye-opener, and for those who have never tried it, I would encourage you to seek out the opportunity to serve this community. It's a great community. It's been a great staffing and great time here, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right down the line. Yeah. Same thing that my colleagues have said, and I've really enjoyed this. I guess if I'm going to put in like sort of my final 2 cents worth, I just want to encourage everybody to continue to consider our downtown park, because I think that's something that will contribute to the quality of life. It's in my ward, which is why I'm bringing it up. And, it's something we started way back when we worked with the downtown business owners to take some of their funding from the tax and put it towards the park. And in that period of time, from then to now, we've done a series of small but significant steps, vacations of property, transfers of property, things like that, to get to where we are today. And it's not a swing set and slide park. It's a park where we'll have a city center. We'll be able to put festivals, concerts. It's a 4-season park, which is amazing. For me personally, I grew up with really not a lot of anything. We didn't have a second car. We had a house because my grandparents gave us one. But my childhood is from going to parks where I could access all of the amenities for free. And this park is going to be that for us. The ice skating rink will be there. Our nice arena that we'll have is great, but it would require transportation, especially for the people who live in my ward to get out there. So that's free. The splash pad would be a free resource versus the pools, which are lovely but cost money. And so I guess now that I'm an adult, I worry about potholes, but when I was a kid, I couldn't tell you if we had potholes or not in our community, but I do remember going with my mom and my brothers to the parks and to the amenities that we had that were free. So from near and dear to my heart, and plus I know that a thriving downtown also means a thriving community, I would encourage the ongoing, incoming members of our community and council to just kind of stay the course on that, and let's get that done. So anyway, there.
Councilman
Mayor,
Bueller.
I'll jump on the bandwagon here. I just want to say it's been an honor working with all of you folks, obviously the folks that are staying, but certainly the ones that are leaving us. And I just want to say I appreciate all your contributions and look forward to seeing some of you on committees, I hope, that can help us out with some of these things with all of your experience. And you'll be missed.
Thank you. Councilman Y.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to thank the people. It's been a great 4 years. I've enjoyed it very, very much. It's been a joy to work with the city, the mayor, the rest of the council. So, yeah, it definitely should be something everybody has to do. But definitely, I've enjoyed it, and I wish the new council the very best.
Yes, thank you. Councilman Hoyer.
Sure, let's do it. It's been a full throttle 2 years. I've learned a great deal as a young person on the city council. What I would close with is that you don't have to be involved with politics to change your community. I always encourage people to get out there, vote, be involved. But you can continue to do great things even not sitting up here. You can organize events. You can come up with charities that take care of so many people and make such a big impact in our community. And we'll continue to grow as long as we want to and as long as we want to put the work in. So,
Thank you. And I'll just reiterate everything everybody said and just add that serving as mayor has really been a highlight in my life. I've treasured every moment. The memories are going to be fantastic. It's a wonderful thing for me in my life to have had that experience. And I think we've had just fantastic council. This council that I've worked with in the last 4 years, I think is some of the best councils I've ever worked with. And I've been in public administration for 35 years. So this was really great council experience for me as well. And I thank everybody, and I wish the new folks all the best, and hope that it's also a great experience for you. So thank you, everyone. And with that, we have no reason to go into executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2, and there being no further business, I declare the meeting adjourned.